Let's talk about sex therapy exercises. I was online and I noticed that there were a lot of people asking about this. And I have a slightly different take on these exercises. The most popular ones I really don't think are effective. And I have come up with other ones that people don't really talk about. So I wanted to share both with you. And I'm going to start with the ones that don't work. The sex therapy exercises that, in my experience, just aren't effective. The number one being sensate focused exercises. That is kind of like the go-to technique for many therapists. What it entails is that, if somebody is uncomfortable with sex or doesn't want to have sex, that there could be like a slow progression and slow introduction to sex. Like you first start out, just touching, and then that you touching your partner and that your partner touching you, and then different parts. And so it's a slow progression to kind of like exposure therapy. I found sensate focus exercises to be not effective. The reason why sensate focus exercises don't work is that if you have a situation, which happens, that's probably 80% of my practice. If you have a situation where, and it's usually a woman that comes in and says, my desire is shot, I don't desire sex at all, and my husband really wants to have sex with me, what do I do? And in that situation, what usually happens is that there's many years before they come to your therapy room where they've been really trying to fix this issue. Because believe me, even though the female appears to it doesn't really bother her that they're not having sex, it definitely bothers her. And she's probably thinking about it as much as the man. And not because she wants to have sex and she can't, but rather that she has to live with this other individual that really wants to have sex and is not having sex and doesn't feel desired. And, when you're feeling rejected and when you're feeling shame, you do things that are toxic, like you disassociate or you get really angry or you get really mopey, and that reaction doesn't really do anything for the whole situation because it's not sexy. So that just reinforces this idea of I don't want to have sex with you. But the woman, let's keep on with the same example, she really wants to do this because she doesn't want to have a mopey, angry husband or a husband that doesn't, pay attention to her. So she tries and tries and tries and tries all these different ways. And all this pushing yourself to have sex when you don't want to, rather than kind of getting it from some sort of inspiration. It doesn't work, not for females anyway, and not for males that present with this issue either, because it's doing more of the same. It's first of all, it's sending the same message. What's wrong with you? You're broken. You need to be fixed. And it reinforces that message of what's wrong with you by saying, hey, these are the ways you can change. Let's talk about your insecurities around this area. Why don't you like sex? What happened to you that made you not like sex? Why are you uncomfortable with the topic of sex? Why aren't you open and free with your sexuality? Are you asexual? All these things come up explaining the situation, but the situation is not that the female partner lost desire and we don't know where it is and we don't know how to get it. It's that there was a relational dynamic that caused that woman to lose her desire. But I do a whole video on that, as I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but the point being is that pushing yourself to do something sexual, because touching each other is sex. So pushing yourself to do sexual things, like even sensate focus exercise, is still a push to do something that should just feel like you want to do it, not that you're forced to do it or that you're pressured to do it. It's something that comes a lot more organically for the person. And so why that's number one, the sensate focus exercise. That was a long-winded response to why it doesn't really work. It's just forcing that person to do more of the same. You can do this. You can just push through it. You can just try more. That in some way they're going to fix it this way. The other one that I came across was hugging until relaxed. Oh, and this is so problematic for so many people, because just imagine if you're the person that soothes by moving away, right? And by getting kind of in your cocoon and protecting yourself. You're hurt, you're wounded, you're protecting yourself, you're inside, you're in that little cocoon, and somebody says, no, you just need to open up your arms and hug until you're relaxed. That's the most threatening and unrelaxing thing somebody that's trying to move into themselves can do. Then you do it and it's not feeling good, it's not feeling organic, and it feels like you can't do it, so there's shame around that. So not the most relaxing thing for some people, for sure. This is huge. Most of the movies I ever watched about couples, don't go to bed angry. Like, definitely don't go to bed until you have resolved everything that needs to be resolved. And it's a beautiful sentiment. I mean, it would be beautiful for everybody to just go to bed in peace and harmony. So that sets expectations, right? And so everybody out there is saying, like, we should stay up and resolve this before going to bed. So even if it's not working, we should just keep on going until it's resolved. And if it's not resolved, we're just going to keep on going, and we're not going to get any sleep until it gets resolved. And for some people, I don't know if you've ever had a relationship with some people that when things aren't resolved, they feels very threatening to them. And so they need to keep on going and going and going and going until it becomes resolved. But a lot of the times what happens is you're just spinning because you haven't addressed the underlying dynamics. You can't even see them. And so you just keep on repeating the same thing over and over again, and it goes in a circle and a circle and a circle and a circle. And so there's no way to stop it. So if you're spinning and this one person that really needs resolution is not going to get resolution, you're probably going to go to bed really late and you're going to be tired the next day. And, it's just like the snowball, like I'm tired. I'm talked out. I'm still hurt. So maybe the idea, instead of like starting a really serious and intense discussion at 9 p.m., that you might, if you want to settle it before you go to bed, to start it really early and to get some tools in place so that you know how to stop the cycle where you can't get out of, and that you can both find some resolution in a place that feels good for both of you. The next one, a lot of people come in and say, I don't know how to talk dirty, and that's what I should be doing, and my husband really wants it, or my wife really wants me to get rough with her and say some things that are degrading, and I can't do it, and so what should I do, because this is what turns them on. That story is just kind of to say, like, everybody has their preferences. Some people like to talk dirty, some don't, and there's no good or bad in either one of them. It is just a preference. But the problem is when we set the expectation that you should talk dirty, that you should be the type of person that engages in dirty talk, and that if you don't, then that means that there's something wrong with you. And again, placing shame on a sexual piece is not the most effective way to go. It doesn't really work. Also, forcing somebody to do something sexual, talking dirty is sexual, when they don't feel comfortable or they don't really want to do it, again, not the best combination. This next one drives me nuts because it's just what everybody thinks. And, like, people come to me and they think that I'm actually going to prescribe this, and it's just, I don't know. Okay, so it's, light some candles, draw a bath, dim down the lights, put some music on, and just have a bubble bath. That will increase your sexual desire. Come to terms with your own body. Look at your vagina, put a mirror down there, like, just become comfortable with your sexuality, play around with yourself, masturbate, all these things that present this picture of like a romantic sexual encounter that everybody should be comfortable with, everybody should be indulging in, and that's the way through to more sexual desire. It's just being really comfortable with your body and yourself, and being able to self-care and take care of yourself and be vocal about what you want and what you need. Yeah, all that sounds wonderful, but that's not usually the way it goes. Lighting candles and taking a bath and taking care of yourself that way cannot fix a relational dynamic. It cannot fix trauma. So what we're doing is then we're presenting this other ideal. Now we have to be all these things plus this person that engages in this type of activity. And if we don't do it, now there's another thing that's wrong with us. Not only don't we want to have sex, but now we're not the sort of type of person that can do these baths and candles and stuff. The last one is tantric exercises, or anything like tantric style, which tantric, and believe I am no expert, I'm probably going to mess this up. What I think from what I've read and what I've seen is that tantric type of exercises are really to help you be in the here and now, within, very conscious of self and very conscious of other, and to engage in this energy that's like sexual, spiritual in a way, and very vulnerable place so they'll have people sit on top of each other and kind of like just gaze into each other's eyes without saying anything, just look at each other. And that could be really uncomfortable for a lot of people. Or, being able to just follow somebody, be in the here and now for God, 15 minutes or an hour, you know, like for some people, they can't be in the here and now, like not for even 3 seconds. So these type of exercises, yeah, they sound great, but also again, you have to look at the context of the person that is going to be engaging in them. Are they in a place where this isn't going to just be another re-traumatizing again? Because, you know, when you have trauma around not being good enough or that you're not reaching some certain expectations, then more of this that we throw at you that is really setting you up for failure because they don't work, the more things you have in order to be ideals for yourself, the harder it becomes. And so this is another ideal. Like, you should be the type of person that can engage in tantric type of exercises. So I think that can be counter therapeutic, as well as all the other ones I just mentioned. Okay, so what are the exercises that actually help? That actually help in this process of figuring out what to do with a lack of desire. Number one, increase emotional connection. For one part of the couplehood, if we're talking about two people, typically one person really needs a connection that is emotional in order to feel sexual. And sometimes and often, the other person doesn't really need that, so doesn't understand why this person would need that. So, and hence it can become quite bad at giving this to the other person. In order to get some sexual desire back, I think being able to give this person, not the person, but the person's desire, what they need. And that person's desire needs emotional connection in order to feel sexy. So step number one, give emotional connection. And how do you do that? There's all different types of ways, but the biggest way is to be curious about who, you know, instead of saying, what did you do today? Say, how did it go today? Oh, it was a bad day. Not, oh yeah, what happened? But rather like, what was it like to go through a bad day? What is it like to be you in the world? Type of thing. So to be really curious will help the other person feel really connected and seen by the person that's asking the questions, for sure. And that's just one way, and I'll be making other videos, lengthier videos on how to do this in many different ways. Number two, which actually should have gone in the stuff that doesn't work, which is scheduling sex. So scheduling sex, in my experience, people come in all the time that haven't tried it, haven't done it. And I've even had people challenge me like, oh, you don't know what you're doing. We should schedule sex. I'm like, okay, let's schedule sex. And they go through the process, but there's a reason why it doesn't work. It's not like it's just out of the blue, like, scheduling sex doesn't work. It's the same type of thing that we were talking about before, is that scheduling sex for the person that doesn't want to have sex is just another opportunity to kind of forcing yourself to do something sexual when you don't want to, just kills your sexual desire in the long run. But I have an alternative. Instead of scheduling sex, what I know to work better is to schedule fun time. So you schedule fun time, you don't schedule fun time that leads to sex. Right? There's no expectation about sex. And I think if you saw it like a first date, it would really help you get first your expectations where they should go, and it will also help you show up in a very fun way. Because at the beginning of the relationship, the first time you met each other, you were probably trying your hardest to be really fun and really engaging, and that's what you should bring to the table. So scheduling fun where you're having fun, you're connecting, and if that leads to anything, then hallelujah. But if it doesn't, then that's totally okay too, because the goal of the night is to have fun. It's not to have sex, it's to have fun. The next thing works really well is changing your expectations. I think for most of us, we define a good sexual experience by whether it's penetrative and orgasmic, basically. And so when we value sex based on these two things become super important for everybody to achieve in any sexual encounter. But what happens to that is that that's kind of impossible. There's going to be times that doesn't happen. But instead of it being okay, well, that's just what we should expect, we think like, oh my God, there's something wrong. Oh my God, this is super scary, because, losing sexual abilities for people can be really scary. This is super scary. What's wrong with me? And now we have an anxious, hypervigilant, and shameful position in regards to this. So that's just going to shut everything down. As soon as we're in a hypervigilant, anxious, toxic place, we're not as effective as we are without those things. So instead, changing the expectations to what people have told me over and over, and it's really important to them, which is, are we having fun and are we connecting? Those are the two things that most people say is important to them in a sexual encounter when they look back to their best sexual encounters. The next one is to ask the question, well, what kind of input do I want? Like, if this person was to be flirty with me or was to be affectionate with me, what do I want it to look like? And think about all the other times where it's felt really good, where you're receiving that input of that person telling you in some way or another that they like you. And for your partner to also state like what's important in that regard too, so that you can start to be more effective in the communication of I like you. So instead of like doing something that doesn't really resonate with the other person, then that's a missed opportunity for communication. So to be able to be more effective is to know like what makes this person hear what I have to say, what kind of language do I need to speak so that this other person can hear me, and vice versa. And lastly, and this is I think the most fun of all, I mean, this is where the energy in the therapy room becomes very light and very loving. And it's the question of, what did you do at the beginning? Like, how did you get this other person to like you? How did you get this other person to have sex with you? How did you show up? Like, did you ask them out? I'm guessing that would be the first step. And did you just, say, hey, where you want to go? Or did you think about it and plan something special and then surprise the other person and ask them out and all that stuff? And did you show up in your sweatpants, or were you like looking and smelling good? Were you being nice? Were you being curious? Rather than what we show up at, after 10, 20 years, and then we're just talking about the family and the house and all that. So that is not the sexiest of ways. And we would never have done that at the beginning. So just stay away from when you're doing the scheduled fun time. Just think of it as, this is my first date, and it will forever be a repetition of first dates until we're not together anymore.